We begin with Japan opening up vaccine appointments at its two large-scale sites. They're now open to all seniors in the country. The state-run sites in Tokyo and Osaka were limited to elderly people living in nearby prefectures. But the Defense Ministry decided on Thursday to widen eligibility to seniors from anywhere in Japan. That's because many appointment slots at the sites had been going unfilled.
We would like to make sure that more people will have more opportunities to get vaccinated.
It'll also accept phone bookings for reservations, as some find it hard to do it online. The State Minister of Defense says they may lower age limits further in the future, which experts think is important to contain the virus.
People of working age, those in their 20s to 50s, are largely responsible for the spread of the virus. Community infections won't be curbed unless about 70% of people in these age groups are vaccinated.
Municipalities are preparing to inoculate the younger generation as well. Amma City in Aichi Prefecture has prioritized reservations for people with underlying health conditions. Those eligible will be able to receive their first jabs as early as this month. And Tokyo's Suginami Ward will accept bookings from people between age 12 and 39 starting next month. Meanwhile, the government has decided to end antivirus restrictions in 3 prefectures on Sunday night because the COVID situation is improving there. Currently, 10 prefectures, including Tokyo and Osaka, are under a state of emergency, while intensive measures remain for 5 other prefectures. The government will also have to decide whether to extend these restrictions, as they're set to expire on June 20th. Nationwide, more than 2,000 new infections and 70 deaths were confirmed on Thursday. The number of patients with severe symptoms is 1,015, 40 fewer than the previous day. The coronavirus pandemic will be high on the agenda at the upcoming Group of 7 summit. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide is on his way to Britain, where leaders of some of the world's advanced economies will discuss pressing global challenges.
I want to contribute to discussion at the summit by having honest dialogues with the G7 leaders, by explaining Japan's positions. As for the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics, we will take thorough infection control measures to ensure safe and secure games. I will explain this and ask for their understanding.
The 3-day summit will be held in Cornwall in southwestern Britain, the first face-to-face G7 leaders meeting in 2 years, and Suga's first since becoming prime minister. On the agenda are the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, as well as economic, trade, and regional issues. They'll also exchange views on their support for developing countries to ensure a fair vaccine supply. Another topic is expected to be a coordinated response to China, which is increasing its presence in the East and South China Seas. The G7 is made up of Japan, the US, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Canada. European Union representatives are usually present, and India, South Korea, South Africa, and Australia have also been invited this year. Turning to Japan's corporate world, an independent probe has found Toshiba colluded with the government to unduly influence a key shareholder vote last year. The company's top shareholder, Effissimo Capital Management, called for an increase in the number of external directors that it nominated at a meeting last July, but the proposal was voted down. The Singapore-based fund and other activist investors then pushed for an investigation into the vote by a panel of lawyers. In a report released on Thursday, the panel says Toshiba colluded with the industry ministry to unlawfully influence shareholders. The report also notes that in May last year, the then president of Toshiba, Kurumatani Nobuaki, met Suga Yoshihide, who was chief cabinet secretary at the time. He is now prime minister. The panel says Kurumatani is likely to have briefed Suga on his plans for handling activist shareholders. Both of them deny any wrongdoing. Toshiba says it'll carefully review the report. The findings could cast a shadow over a shareholder meeting later this month. A Japanese scientist is talking up a drug he developed that uses a virus to attack brain tumor cells. He says it could also be used on other types of cancer. Professor Todo Tomoki works at the University of Tokyo Institute of Medical Science. He spoke about his virus therapy on Thursday in an online news conference. The drug uses a herpes virus that's genetically engineered to replicate only in cancer cells and destroy them. Japan's health ministry approved it last month for a limited term. Officials recognized its effectiveness on malignant brain tumors called gliomas. Todo says the proportion of people who survive 1 year with serious malignant brain tumors is around 15% with standard treatments such as surgery. He says the proportion with the viral drug in a clinical trial was 92.3%.
I want to start clinical trials on various kinds of cancer patients as soon as possible. I want to gather clinical data quickly.
The drug is the first of its kind to be approved in Japan. Todo says he worked with its manufacturer and the government to open the way. Turning to Myanmar, where Aung San Suu Kyi faces fresh corruption charges. The ousted leader has been detained since the military seized power in February. The state-run newspaper reports that Aung San Suu Kyi allegedly illegally accepted $600,000 in cash and about 11 kilograms of gold from a former regional minister. She's also accused of misusing her authority when a foundation she chairs leased some property. That follows 6 other charges from the junta, which appears to be trying to prolong her detention. Court proceedings have already started. Gunmen have killed at least 10 Afghans working for an international mine removal organization. Violence has been surging in Afghanistan since the U.S. began withdrawing the last of its troops. The attack occurred late Tuesday at a camp run by the Halo Trust. More than 100 people engaged in mine removal were at the camp at the time. At least 10 were killed and 16 wounded. The organization issued a statement strongly condemning the attack on staff who were carrying out humanitarian work to save lives. Afghan officials blamed the Taliban, who denied involvement. Some local media are reporting that the Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attack. U.S. troops plan to complete their withdrawal process by September 11th. The departure of international troops comes amid a deadlock in peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Mongolia's former prime minister has declared victory in a presidential election. If his win is confirmed, it'll further consolidate the power of the ruling party. Ukhnagin Khurelsukh is 52. At a news conference late Wednesday, he said he'll devote himself to creating a bright and safe society for children and young people. Khurelsukh was prime minister from 2017 until January this year. He chairs the Mongolian People's Party, which won a strong majority in parliamentary elections last year. The presidential election was held Wednesday with 3 candidates. State-run media say preliminary results show Khurelsukh with 68% of the vote. Lawmakers in El Salvador have made history by approving a proposal to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. They've passed a law that will allow people to use the cryptocurrency to make purchases and pay taxes. The legislation was proposed by President Najib Bukele. It'll go into effect in 90 days. making Bitcoin the second currency to be accepted in El Salvador alongside the US dollar.
In the short term, this will generate jobs and help provide financial inclusion to thousands outside the formal economy. And in the medium and long term, we hope that this small decision can help us push humanity at least a tiny bit into the right direction.
The president said the change will empower people who don't have bank accounts or access to other conventional financial services. He said it'll allow them to make payments with their smartphones. He also said it'll make international remittances cheaper. Some experts are concerned about the volatility of Bitcoin's price relative to the dollar. They also caution that it's difficult for governments and central banks to monitor and control it. It's time now for a check on world weather with our meteorologist, Sayaka Mori. People in southeastern Australia are shivering under extraordinarily cold weather. Sayaka has the details.
Some areas experienced the coldest day in decades, and 2 alpacas looked so comfortable with the snow. Blackheath was blanketed with snowfall on Thursday. What a nice picture. And Sydney saw 10 degrees for the daytime high on Thursday, making it the coldest day since 1984. At the same time, stormy weather battered Melbourne and surrounding areas. Take a look at this footage. Storms are bringing powerful gusts as high as 120 kilometers per hour and heavy downpours of more than 200 millimeters, causing downed trees and loss of power in places like Melbourne. There have been no reports of a serious injury. Meanwhile, the system has turned parts of New South Wales into a winter wonderland. Over 40 centimeters of snow has fallen in some places of New South Wales. It looks like conditions will remain the same in parts of New South Wales, Victoria, and also Tasmania. Especially Victoria and Tasmania will see continuous wet weather into the weekend. This low will continue to move down towards the south at a slow pace. Now, temperatures are going to be slightly warming up to 15 degrees in Sydney on your Friday. Still rainy weather continues in Perth, 18 for the high, and only 18 in Alice Springs, but warming up to 30 in Darwin. Meanwhile, 2 areas of the U.S. experienced copious amounts of heavy rainfall in just 48 hours. Nearly 500 millimeters of rain fell in Arkansas. And we saw over 250 millimeters of rain up in the north. We will see heavy rainfall, gusty winds, large hail, and some tornadoes in the northern areas. And then we will see dry conditions persist across western areas of the United States. There's a possibility of more wildfires. Temperatures are going to be on the rise into the weekend and into next week in parts of the United States. That's it for me. Stay safe.
In Myanmar, state-run media report that the military government is bringing more corruption charges against former leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The World Food Programme says 4 million people face severe hunger in Ethiopia's Tigray area. A lack of information on food supplies there is deeply worrying, it says. In Peru's presidential election, candidate Keiko Fujimori asks election officials to investigate 500,000 ballots as Pedro Castillo takes a lead of less than 1%. And people in many northern parts of the world saw the moon partially cover the sun in an annular solar eclipse.
Boris Johnson has said there is complete harmony on the need to solve post-Brexit trade problems in Northern Ireland following his first face-to-face meeting with President Biden. The two met in Cornwall on the eve of the G7 summit. The two men also agreed a deal, labelled the Atlantic Charter, which commits the two countries to work together on global challenges, and they established a task force to re-establish travel across the Atlantic. Results from a trial to defeat dengue fever has cut cases by 77%. In the groundbreaking research, mosquitoes were infected with bacteria that reduced the insect's ability to spread the virus. A partial solar eclipse has taken place across much of the northern hemisphere. Lucky observers witnessed a ring of brilliant light around the moon as it passed directly in front of the sun.